I was curious about just a few days ago, we saw how in the state of Uttar Pradesh, 4 farmer protesters were killed by a cabinet colleague's son. And the son of your cabinet colleague is in jail right now because he killed 4 farmer protesters. I was wondering why there is no word about this from the Prime Minister, from many senior ministers, and why, when somebody asks questions about these things, why is it such a defensive reaction that when Amartya Sen says that there is intolerance, why is there no acknowledgement that these kinds of ghastly things are happening? And we just pretend, are we pretending to be asleep? Is that what's going on?
No, absolutely not. And it's nice of you to have picked up that one incident, which is absolutely condemnable. Every one of us say that. Equally, there are instances happening elsewhere, is my concern. India has issues of such nature happening in very many different parts of the country. Equally, I would like you and many others, inclusive of Dr. Amartya Sen, who all know India, to raise it at every time when it happens. Not just raise it when it suits us, because it's a state where BJP is in power, one of my cabinet colleagues' son is in probably trouble, and also assume that it's actually them who did it and not anybody else. Due course of justice will also have a complete inquiry process to establish it. And it's not being defensive about my party or my prime minister, it's being defensive about India. I will talk for India. I will talk for justice for the poor. I will not be mocked at. And if it is mocking, I will be defensive to stand up and say, sorry, let's talk on facts. That's my answer for you.
Our primary subject today is economics, but in knowledge of the fact that you were coming, a number of people in our community, notably Amartya Sen, have expressed rather strong reservations about the government of which you were a part and its approach to ethnic issues within India. And there's a feeling that the legacy of tolerance that was an important part of what bound the United States and India together, and certainly that these are areas where we have very serious issues in the United States, but that legacy of tolerance has been very much called into question by your prime minister's past and by some of the statements that have been made by your current home minister and your current government, and that the attitude taken by your government to the Muslim population is something that comes between the United States, given our values of universalism and inclusion, and India. And so I think it's appropriate that is one of many questions that we ask you in the course of a talk like this, that question be put to you on behalf of, I think, a number of people in our community who have it on their
minds. It's one thing to have a view and totally another to base it on facts. If opinions become my prejudice, there's no way in which I can counter it. I'm sure all of us are familiar with the fact that sometimes it is an effort similar to waking up somebody who's pretending to sleep. If you're genuinely sleeping, I can tap on your shoulder and say, please wake up. But if you're pretending to sleep, will you wake up? You can't, you won't. And I'll be fooling myself thinking I'm waking you up. There are scholars. I respect Dr. Amartya Sen, who you mentioned. I would think for every one of his view, he go to India, move freely around, and find out what's happening. That itself would help us to know, particularly a scholar is talking based on facts. In India, law and order is a subject which is each province for its own. So if you were to look at the United States, and if there is one particular state, I don't know, Texas, for instance, if it has a problem, it may not be a problem which the President of the United States will have to deal with. It will be the governor of that state. That is the case even in India. There are provinces which are ruled by not the party to which the Prime Minister belongs. Even last night, not even the day before yesterday night, even last night, in a state which is ruled by, in a state meaning in a province which is ruled by not the party to which Prime Minister belongs, crimes have taken place, poorest to the poor have been hit, some dead, but even that will be at the doorstep of the Prime Minister because that suits my narrative. It is not right. Because in that state, in that province, law and order is governed by the elected chief minister of that region, who's not even a party man for Prime Minister Modi. I remember in 2014, as soon as the Prime Minister came to power, there were a series of attacks on churches, places of Christian worship. And there again, there were voices. People returned their awards, the Padma awards that we give in the country, highest civilian awards, or saying this government is against minorities. Look at the way Christians are being treated. Churches are being attacked. Every state in which this happened had their own investigation. The committees, the police, and everybody belonged to their respective states. The Prime Minister had nothing to do with it. You would be surprised to know that every one of these attacks, after proper investigation, proved out to be nothing to do with the Prime Minister, nothing to do with the BJP, nothing to do with any communal angle. But the blame was put at the Prime Minister's door. Awards were returned saying, oof, it's difficult for me to live in this country. Oh, my minorities are being offended. It turned out that none of them had anything to do with the communal angle, and none of them to do with the BJP or the Prime Minister. Similar is the way in which this time, after 2019, when Prime Minister Modi came back with even better, stronger mandate, this campaign which is going on to say that there are communal violence, communal whatever, minorities are in difficulty. Again, a question of law and order being a state subject. Each state has its own. In states where parties who care nothing for the BJP, there's been atrocious violence. Is that also something to be answered by the Prime Minister? And let me come down to a very personal and sort of, you may think it's petty, but I will quote this. Tell me the number of people who have criticized Prime Minister Modi in such derogatory words, calling him names, abusing him. Has any one of them been touched? Have they been questioned? Whereas in non-BJP ruled states, when the chief ministers have been questioned, first thing is to arrest them and put them in jail. I'll name the states where this has happened. In fact, some of them are still languishing in the jail for having spoken ill of a particular elected chief minister who belongs to an opposition party. Would the same set of scholars who are talking about Prime Minister Modi also comment on those states and say, what's happening? India's tolerant culture. No. It's worrying that scholars can be now influenced more by their personal likes and dislikes rather than comment on the basis of facts. It's really worrying that scholars can become imprisoned by their own likes and dislikes rather than be equanimous, look at the facts and data before them, and then speak.